Hello, welcome to The Honest Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob, and like a rabbit in a hat, Games Workshop have pulled out an article about magic in Age of Sigmar 4 and what it's going to look like. And we are going to talk about this in this video. So let me know what you think of the video in the comments below. I love reading those comments, so please do, because I love everyone's thoughts. Ask me a bunch of questions. I'll try to reply to them when we get to them. And this is a big article with lots of information. So it's going to be very heavy on the info. So get ready to deep dive some of this information. All right, so let's go straight into casting and unbinding magic. Okay, each spellcaster in the game is identified as a wizard, and you can see that at the bottom of their war scroll. So keywords here: hero, wizard 1 in infantry. That's where we can see it, which is followed by their power level, a number in brackets that determines the number of spell, unbind, and banish abilities that they can use per phase. So a hero with the keyword wizard 2 could fire off a single spell and still attempt to banish an endless spell or invocation in that phase. And it also means that you're going to be able to do 2 unbinds in the next spell phase, which will be opponent spell phase, right? So that's what it means. So a 1 next to it means you're casting 1 spell, or unbinding an endless spell, which is normally done in the hero phase at the same time as you would be casting your spells. All right, now we've got a war scroll look at a weird knob shaman. Oddly, only moves 4 inches. I guess he's a bit crook-legged. I'm not really sure about that, but I think it should be a bit faster. 6 health, which is nice and tanky, with a 6-up save, which is not very survivable. Now, as you can see, he's got an okay attack profile with 3 attacks, 4 threes, rend 1, damage D3. But what's really fun is his war scroll from Age of Sigmar, his war scroll spell from Age of Sigmar 3 has gone off his war scroll and has been turned into a shooting attack, which is a 10-inch range puke, which is 4 attacks, 2s and 3s, no rend, damage D3. And we've seen that shoot into combat ability, which we talked about in a previous video, which means he's still going to be able to do it when he's in combat, which is very nice. This, compared to Age of Sigmar 3, is a direct buff to the Weird Knob Shaman as a spellcaster, because previously only able to cast 1 spell, he now no longer has to choose between his War Scroll spell and some other cool spell that he wants to bring that gets turned into a shooting attack. I would think, and I obviously don't know this yet, that most of the shooting attacks that we're going to see in Age of Sigmar 4 most of the shooting spells, so your D6 Mortal Wound spell or anything like that previously were War Scroll spells or spell laws, are going to be turned into shooting attacks that the wizard is going to be able to carry around. This is a direct buff because this effectively adds a second cast onto the unit. In addition to that, it also means that unit can do those shooting attacks and your opponent isn't going to be able to stop them via unbinds. So this hopefully will bring up the efficacy of wizards who've kind of struggled, and I've talked about this a lot during Age of Sigmar 3, that one-cast wizards suck and it doesn't make them feel like a really potent wizard. So this is good. In addition, the Weird Knob Shaman's got a special ability called Brutal Power, where you add 1 to this unit's power level while there are any friendly Ironjawz units that have 10 or more models holding in 12. So now it can cast 2 and unbind 2 as long as it's near other units, which is awesome. And we love that as well, because now this Weird Knob Shaman, which is one of my favorite sculpts in Age of Sigmar, I think it's stunning, it can now potentially cast 2 spells and has a pretty decent shooting attack. That's great. We love that leveling up of what the wizards do, because previously they were really weak source, and you only brought them for 1 particular spell, which Games Workshop have also made a massive change on, which is excellent. Spell laws have changed in the new edition and are selected as part of constructing your army. Pick a single spell law, and every sorcerer in your army can attempt to cast any of the spells from that law. This is awesome. This means no longer need to keep track of which specific Weird Knob Shaman knows Mighty Ebb, but you can attempt to cast a spell with any of them. This is such a great change. In Age of Sigmar 3 and any of the other Age of Sigmars, you're always having to choose the best spell, and you never had time for the situational spell or that spell that would have come in really clutch, and it was really you felt really trapped by choosing spells for your wizards, which is odd because they should be able to manifest more options than any other of the units on the board. So this is a really lovely change. It does also mean that on your army list, you're going to pick a spell law and all of your wizards gain access to it. So now, right now, that means that from what we've read, you would just only have access to one spell law. I'm sure there are going to be multiple ways around this. Like, Tzeentch demons probably can have access to another spell law, or special characters will gain access to other spells, like we've seen with Nagash's War Scroll. So there's going to definitely be ways to have additional spells and maybe gain access to other spell laws. And also, endless spells are spell laws as well, but we'll talk about those in a moment. Let's look at the Mighty Headbutt spell, which you declare. It's an 18-inch range attack that does D3 mortal damage, unless it's against a wizard, in which case it's 3 mortal damage, which is nice. You've got to be visible to see them. It's a good spell, genuinely is, so that's fine. No more than one friendly wizard can cast the spell each turn, unless that spell has the new unlimited keyword. And even unlimited spells can't be repeatedly cast by the same wizard in the same turn. So that's pretty interesting. So maybe like Arcane Bolt, or there'll be some generic spells that you're going to find in the core rulebook. But I also suspect many of the spell laws are going to get an unlimited spell, where it's something that's very thematic to how their army plays and is really beneficial, and all of your wizards can potentially do it. This also means that you can really help out magic heavy armies, or armies that are meant to operate a lot in the magic phase, because you can really give them a lot of options but not make them too powerful, because you can control how much of the spell can be done. So this is a really great change as well, which I love. You still cast spells on 2d6 like you did previously. You still unbind on 2d6, and you've got to roll above their casting value to do so. And any rolls of a double 1 mean that you're going to take D3 mortal damage. And when your casters are normally 4 or 5 wounds, that's pretty scary, to be honest. It goes on to talk about how unbinding is within 30 inches of an enemy wizard casting the spell. You still don't need to be able to see that wizard. Make an unbinding roll of 2d6. If the roll exceeds the casting roll, then the spell is unbound. So this is also something that's important. You don't need to see them. Just remember that, because people still, even in Age of Sigmar 3, mess that up. Unbinding is an important part of spellcasting. Counterplay with the magical intervention, which is the command ability that we talked about when we talked about command abilities. Letting cannon casters crack off spells in their opponent's hero phase, the unbind reaction is vital. And you can make a number of unbinds equal to the power level of your wizard. They also talk about prayers in this article as well, but we're going to skip this for a moment. And instead, just for a moment, we're going to talk about endless spells, because endless spells have become really interesting. Endless spells have been grouped into manifestation laws. So let's say you are playing with your Gloomspite Gits. The 3 endless spells that you would get in your Gloomspite Gits will become the Gloomspite Gits endless spell manifestation law. This is probably different to one of the other spell laws that you'll have, like the law of the dank or the law of the fetid mushroom, who knows. And so right now, the article isn't clear whether or not you get the spell law and also a manifestation law, so you can choose from both, or if you're only going to get choice to do one. Again, like I said, I think there's probably going to be options that you can probably add other spell laws into your army at army selection. And so I wouldn't be surprised if you get a spell law and also manifestations in the future, but you might have to pay something. We don't know what that looks like yet. This means that the endless spells are also going to be free. So the endless spells won't cost you anything points-wise, which is a bonus and a negative. This means that if you love the endless spells, you finally have a reason to bring them, and all your wizards can be trying to throw them on the board. Also, the negative, though, is that list writing. Normally, you ended up with like a list that was like 1,930 points, and no units in your army cost 70 points. And so you'd pick some sort of endless spell that you would put in your list to kind of bring up to the 2,000 round points. With that gone, then that's going to be a problem, but maybe that's how you're going to pay for a manifestation law. Maybe your manifestation law is 80 points or something. I don't know. But you might end up with a game where someone's paying 2,000 points and someone's paying 1,930 points at the moment, but I'm sure that's something that'll be resolved. And like I've said, not sure if you're going to be able to have additional manifestation laws, but there are also some generic manifestation laws. So each army will have access to their own manifestation law for their endless spells, but you'll also have generic manifestation laws, like they said here. Some factions will have their own manifestations, while the current endless spells from Malign Sorcery and Forbidden Power are divided into thematic laws. You find the infamous and ghastly Purple Sun in the Morbid Conjuration manifestation law, for instance, alongside Suffocating Gravetide, Malevolent Maelstrom, and Sorcerer's Shackles. You can also get rid of the end of spells. Wizards and priests both can attempt to use the Banished Manifestation ability to expunge these autonomous arcane forms. There are more ways to interact with these conjurations, which they're going to talk about in the future. But again, you just have to be within 30 inches. You have to roll 2d6. This is all happening in a hero phase. And then if you exceed the casting value, or the banishment value of the spell, which is the same thing, then you're going to be able to remove it. You cannot pick the same manifestation as target of the ability more than once per turn. So one attempt to banish a spell. The last thing, and the thing that's causing a lot of confusion online that they covered in this article, is about chanting prayers. And I wish the world would give me, I pray for the strength to be able to get through this article, because it is a little bit confusing. So we'll try and deal with it. Okay, so as with your spellcasters and sorcerers, your priests are marked out by the keyword with an associated power level and may use a combination of prayer and banish abilities each phase up to that number. We're going to, for a moment, just skip the slaughter priest. We'll come back to him in a moment. We're going to talk about casting prayers. Okay, so, but you can see on his war scroll, he's a hero and he has the priest 1, meaning he's got the ability to chant a prayer. Okay, like spellcasters, you'll pick one specific prayer law when building your army, but there are similarities end. Instead of making a single dramatic casting roll, these combative clergy beseech their deities through chanting. Every prayer will ask you to roll a d6 chanting roll, and on a 2-up, your priest gains that many ritual points, which accumulate over multiple turns. Each prayer has a chanting value that you'll need to match before it will be answered. And many include a higher value that can power up the resulting miracle even further. For example, a slaughter priest can choose to unleash Witchbane Curse to weaken an enemy wizard once they get 4+ ritual points, or hold out for a chanting value of 8+ to also deal 3 mortal damage. So I think a lot of people are confused by this, but I think this is the way it works. I have a priest and I decide I would like to do Witchbane Curse. I roll a dice and I roll a 2. That means I get 2 points. That's great. The next turn, when I could potentially chant a prayer, which would be the hero phase, I roll again. And this time I roll another 2. And because I had 2 from the last turn and 2 from this turn, I am able to put that together for a 4 and finally cast it. Do I think that you're going to need to have to keep doing the same prayer in order to build them up? I do, because you are, kind of like, it's like a summon, like you keep praying until the miracle is delivered. That's the way in which I think it works. And then you could build it up to get the higher effect. This is brilliant, in my opinion, because it does a couple of things. One, you're able to make more effective priests because your priests are more reliable. What I mean by this is in current Age of Sigmar, if you have a spell that only works on a 4+, you either do it or you don't. However, in this situation, if I roll a 3, like in new Age of Sigmar 4, that means I'm going to be able to bank them for the next turn and almost guarantee my ability to do the prayer. There are still some failure points. When I roll a 1, I'm going to take D3 mortal damage, or 1 mortal damage. Oh no, sorry. It does say in this article what happens. When you roll a 1, you lose D3 of your ritual points. So there's this kind of like swing back and forth on how many you have. If you do have a priest that can chant 2 prayers, you are going to have 2 different pools that you're going to have to track, which is fine. That's not a problem. You just put that on the side. But this means that you can have more powerful prayers because you can give up a turn effectively of praying and then build up to a stronger prayer in the future, which is some nice design space for the units, in my personal opinion. And I really love this. There's probably also other ways like artifacts, maybe spells, maybe terrain piece, maybe units. Maybe some units always give you +1 to the number of ritual points you generate because they're also quite priestly, which is also a very cool little mechanic. I think that's really fun. So that's the way it works, in my personal opinion, and I think that that's really cool. As for this this prayer, it's awesome. You can pick an enemy wizard within 18 inches and reduce them to power level 0, so they're not going to be able to cast a spell, which is wild. And if you do it on the more empowered version, they're going to take 3 mortal damage, which is great. So I love this a lot. And I think it's great. And while I think it's a little bit confusing, obviously when we see the proper rules, we'll get the actual details on it. I think this is enough for me to say that I think that the redesign for prayers is excellent. And I also think the redesign for spells is really good as well. That's my hot take from this video, if you need a hot take, because what they've done is they made it that you have access to more spells. They've moved what I would like, if you'd have asked me, Rob, what would I have liked to see from Age of Sigmar 4? I'd have liked to see one cast wizards be more effective and see more play on the tabletop. They're pretty fun. Sure, god level wizards would always see play. Teclis, Nagash as an example. But those little one cast wizards, if they weren't doing a Mystic Shield or some uber spell that will really be a game breaker, they normally didn't see the tabletop. And they would be incidentally a wizard. Whereas I like the idea now that a wizard could be a unit that's effective in its own right, and similar with a priest, which is great. So for me, these are all great changes, and I'm excited to see how it works in the future. If you like this video, thanks very much for watching. I super appreciate it. We have a Discord, which you can access via our Patreon, which I'd love you to join. We're all excited about Age of Sigmar 4, and we're talking about it a lot, and I'd love you to leave comments below. Let me know what you think about all these changes, what your favorite units are, what wizards you like to see improved in Age of Sigmar 4. That'd be cool. Thanks very much for listening. I'll see you guys soon.